everybody. Welcome to a special day and time of Live Live. It's episode 28. We're here on Monday morning as opposed to the usual Wednesday. We have an all-day company planning meeting, our quarterly, and I just can't reschedule that. So I moved Christopher Lawton and Micah Stanley around the calendar like 10 times. So I appreciate you guys being patient and being here. Quick intro. I like to do people's intros based on my own head, so it might not be totally accurate. But Micah and Christopher are incredible architects, founded Lawton Stanley Architects, I think 14 years ago, pretty much the same time as LivCo. Done some of the most incredible work in Chicago in boutique spaces, including the Curtis Duffy's Ever restaurant after, as well as Grace, Curtis Duffy's original restaurant. And just really beautiful work, and excited to kind of talk about how that came to be. Welcome, guys.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having us.
I was just saying it's been a long time. Christopher, who I call Chris, but I'm going to be professional here and call you Christopher because we
call me whatever you want. I don't care. I think
college buddies.
Yeah.
We'll go back to Chip. I think there was an alter ego.
Yeah.
We were in college together at Virginia Tech. We were roommates living in Lincoln Park. Lived in Chicago together. You guys started and met at Dirk Dennison Architects, right?
Yep.
Right.
We worked together there for 6 years. I was there 7 years. Micah was there 6. And basically started doing side work around 2010, maybe 2009. And, we kind of came together. Honestly, he had a vet clinic and I was doing work for a private equity company. And we were kind of helping each other. And then 2 other large residential renovation and a developer in the Kingsbury Triangle area kind of we spoke to them, and then we met in the kitchen of Dirk Dennison Architects and had the quickest partnership agreement ever. We're like, hey, do you want to do this? All right, great, let's do it. And we started doing that. And then Micah left DDA, I think in October of 2011. And then I had an unceremonial ending in December where I was talked to about doing side work, and then I ended up leaving in January 2012. And I think we were doing work for a year prior to that, but the actual formation of the company was December 2011, but we always say 2012 just because that's when it really started. So
I like that classic origin story. I like that you call it side work. It's the old bootlegging, right?
It's bootlegging, yeah.
It's the Frank Lloyd Wright origin. He was working for Louis Sullivan and doing his own work, and Louis Sullivan's like, get the hell out of here.
Yeah, that's basically. I like to say that it sounds better to say that I was just like fired because it's a better story. It wasn't quite that egregious. It was actually really hard. Like, it was a hard conversation because I was pretty close with the owner, and it was more along the lines of, you need to stop doing this or you got to go. And I said, how long do you want? And then it got very emotional, and we ended up agreeing that I would stay till the end of January, and that was it. And it makes me sad, actually. I haven't really talked to him since then. So.
Well, he was one of my thesis advisors. He was my main thesis advisor. So
yeah.
I didn't tell him that I knew you.
That was probably a good idea. Don't mention that. It's not going to do you any favors to say you know me, especially to say you're friends with me. That would be not a good idea.
Micah, does Chris's recollection of the story line up with yours?
That's fairly accurate. Yes. Yeah. And it was, I think even Dirk himself got started that same way, right? Was doing side work, and
he was at
Bonner or whatever he was, I think. And I think it started with projects that definitely weren't going to be at that office, right? Like,
no, we never stole clients.
We would never steal clients, like underbid on purpose within like that would, we have at least that much of a moral compass. We would never do that,
We were certainly in the same space as him, so we were in, we would say we were competitors. I don't know if you would agree with that, but yeah, we never actively went after his clients. Through the years, there's been some overlap, but the first 3-4 years, there was no direct connection to anyone that I can recollect anyway. But yeah, and then that restaurant project, the first restaurant that we designed on our own. So Micah and I had worked on a couple of restaurants while we were at DDA. But it was really, I would say it was the first restaurant we really designed. And that ended up being Grace Restaurant. And because Curtis Duffy is a very well-known chef, or was becoming well-known at the time, and there ended up being a documentary called For Grace, we kind of got known for doing restaurants. And what was interesting is you would think that, if you do these kind of higher end, fine dining, Michelin ambition restaurants, that's what you would continue to get. But we didn't really see that. We actually got calls from like private equity companies who had bought larger fast casual chains and asked us to redo the design deck to make it a little more hip, a little more cool. And then we started doing just a slew of what I would say fast casual, maybe still, sit down restaurants, but just a ton of them. And we got known for that. And we did just a ton of restaurant work for almost a decade. I mean, a long time. That was 60-70% of our work. And then we always had a high-end residence as well, but usually just one. And maybe we'd have like a condo renovation or, little things on the side. But the bread and butter was this restaurant work, 1 or 2 large, either ground up construction, primary residence or residence, or a large renovation of a residence. And, I always kind of talk, I think I've said this to you before, like the way Micah and I always have seen ourselves is, we're not like a business. We're just 2 guys who do projects. And we just wanted the projects to be as good as we had the ability to make them. And hopefully we made enough to sustain ourselves. And we kind of did that for a long time, but we never really put any emphasis on, making the office larger, or in fact, we did everything we could to not build it up. we reach out to people who are also 1 or 2 person shops, and they help us if we get a project that's too big. And that methodology has its pluses and its minuses. And the big one is, it's not a thing without us, right? So if, other people build businesses and then they can sell it. And I don't think you can have Lawton Stanley Architects without Micah and I. And maybe that's just arrogance, I don't know. But I never saw it as something outside of 2 guys doing work, like designing projects. So, but yeah, it's been a trip.
Well, I want to dig into that a little bit more, because there's a lot of interesting thinking there. And before the show, we kind of talked about, I had Adam Reed Tucker on last week, and he's a Lego artist.
Yeah.
And he's really an artist and a storyteller. Fundamentally, like, that's his passion. That is obviously, like, he's far and beyond anyone else who does that. And now he's turning it into a business. But part of the conversation I had with him, because he works 14 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Yeah.
And I was kind of talking about, how do you build all these things and do all this? It takes more than 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. He's like, well, the reality is most of my time is spent on the business, and I don't get to spend time on any of the fun stuff. So I can see, and there was an Elon Musk interview from way back, I think in his PayPal days, where he's like, being a business owner really stinks, it's just miserable because you don't get to work on the stuff that actually works right.
Exactly.
You spend all your time fixing things that don't work. So
Mhm.
there is something to that, right?
Yeah.
Now, in terms
So
of
we had a brief moment, right, where we had gotten very busy. So we had picked up basically several contracts for multiple restaurants per year, and we felt comfortable bringing people in. And we brought in a couple of employees, and we actually had, I think, 4 interns that were actually linked to IIT in a roundabout way. And so we had roughly like 10 people in the office for this brief, I'd say like maybe a year moment. And the interns were temporary, and the pressure that I personally felt during that time to go out and get work, like it actually made me have a lot of more respect for Dirk, because we kind of made jokes at the time about like him like going places and doing all this stuff, but it was to bring in work. And I found that I really did not enjoy that 70-80% of my time was going out and trying to meet these people that could potentially be a job down the line. And maybe if I was more business minded, I would have stuck with that, and that would have been my role. And I would have been flying to Miami and doing stuff that got me more into the world where I can bring in that work. But I didn't really enjoy it very much, to be honest with you. And I don't think of myself as a particularly amazing designer. Micah is a particularly amazing designer, but I really enjoy trying to be. And trying to get better at the actual skill of designing something. And when things naturally pared down in the office, just internally, I was like, I don't think I want to do that again. And we never had to. We did have to let someone go at one point in our group, during this whole thing, but that time we didn't let anyone go. We had people leave of their own accord, and that was a whole other thing of you have people come in, and when they start to kind of learn how you do things, they move on. And it was a lot of investment on our part, and it was like, was that worth it? And for us, we kind of just made a decision. Okay, if we get that busy, we have these connections to really good designers and architects who are 1 or 2 person shops who are solid, and we can reach out to them to come in and help us get something done. But then we don't have to continue to bring in work to pay for that person. And so anyhow, that was a really long story, but that's kind of how we ended up where we are in terms of staffing and the way our office currently looks, which is basically just Micah and I and a few people that we have good relationships with.
Well, I'm gonna poke the beast here a little bit.
Go for it.
In terms of the entire design community. So you said going out and getting work. So it's sales.
Yeah.
It's just what it is. But why in the world of design community is sales considered a bad word?
I don't think it's a bad word. If you love it, I don't necessarily. So between Micah and I am a better salesman, right? He's a better designer. I'm a better salesman. I'm pretty good in in the environment.
Christopher's a great designer too, but
He
I just gotta interject that real quick.
You're really beating yourself up today.
Well, I'm just trying to be honest, or at least how I
not being a very good salesman, though.
Yeah. Well, I don't do this in front of clients, I guess. But I don't think it's a bad word. It's just I want to be in a position where I'm doing something that I enjoy, and if 25% of my time is dedicated to business development, I'm okay with that. When we had 10 people in the office, it really was most of what I did. I was doing business development and bookkeeping, right?
Yeah.
And that, it was okay. And to be honest, if you had asked me before I did it for a year, if I'd be okay, but yeah, that's fine. I don't care. I can do that. But it wasn't true. Like I got into it, and I wouldn't have actively changed it. It was more when those people kind of left, right? So the interns, left because it was a temporary thing. But when the employees moved on, they moved to Texas, that, it was like, okay, I have an opportunity to kind of get back into designing stuff. And the timing of it was great because it was right when Ever started. So I got to play a more active role in what that space was going to be. And, it was nice to be back doing that as opposed to what I had been doing for the previous year.
Yeah. Yeah. On the sales front, I do. I agree. It's not necessarily a bad word in the design community, but I feel like those qualities that make you a good designer to like overanalyze things and pick things apart in an objective way don't necessarily translate to sales well, right? Because I don't know. I think as a designer, you're always tending towards self-criticism, right? You're coming back to your design and you're like, let's look at this again. It's not right. It's not perfect enough, right? So there's plenty of self-criticism there. It's hard to have that mentality of like overanalyzing and self-criticism if you're also trying to sell yourself as the best choice, right? Because you always point out a lot of gray area and see a lot of gray area. I hear myself do this constantly, right? Like Micah, why is your company the best? Well, there's things we get right and there's things we get wrong. Like I would immediately go to that, and that's like
we're not. Yeah, we're pretty good. Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of that. The kind of creative problem solver doesn't always lend itself to, I don't know, sales, especially to somebody like in the business world who doesn't want to hear a half an hour like synopsis of the current state of architectural theory, right? You got to pare it down for somebody who doesn't really give a shit about design. They just want to know like how you're going to deliver, right? So I don't know. Yeah, that is a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, and most of the clients we deal with the exception of the chef-driven concepts, they're much more business minded, right? They want design to be enticing for people to go there, and they do acknowledge that it has a role and that it's important, but their aims are, how do we make this as profitable as possible? And so when we start to second guess things or think, maybe on this one it can be better, they really don't want to hear it at that point. Like they just want to, oh no, you did the design deck, let's move forward, let's go. So
yeah, well, for us, design is everything, but for them, design is step G of 87 things, right?
Yeah, I'm going to go back, and it's become another theme of this show to often kind of dig back to our architectural education days and what was great about it and what was missing. And something that I've learned was missing, and maybe it lines up with this business development sales conversation, because this is a common challenge amongst design firms. I mean, even when I was at Arc Ideas, like Joe Pasquinelli would much rather be at his drawing board designing the next building than going out golfing with potential clients. Right? It was just, that's what but he was in charge of business development, but it's always a challenge. But I would say back in school, we're so often asking questions and challenging ourselves, but we're never taught to really ask questions to people.
Right.
So we were always handed a program. We never had to extract the program. We never had to ask the questions. We would figure out something, we were given a problem or a program, and we would develop this thing and present the red mug. And then we have a professor ask us a million questions that we had to try and answer or think about something differently. But at no point did we ever have to go and just ask what people's needs, pain points were, and things like that. And that's really kind of the fundamental basis of sales. Is not about me. It's about you and understanding how I might be able to help and support you, and why I may be a good fit, or we may be a good fit for you or not. And they never freaking teach us that.
No.
They never teach us to ask the questions of other people. We never had to meet with potential clients. And you're not going to learn that in an architecture firm, right?
You will if you're doing side work. Yeah.
If you're running projects yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you 100%. And I feel like I've had a lot of painful lessons in how bad it is to really disappoint clients and design something that they just can't use or live with, right? Or feel like they weren't listened to. You know, that's not a good feeling. I mean, you know, part of what feels great about what we do is like having this great space that photographs well at the end, right? And looks cool to all your architecture friends. But another big source of gratification, maybe even the biggest, is making clients happy and making sure that they can actually use it right, you know? And the nice thing about restaurants in particular is day one, you realize if you screwed up or not, because one
100%.
if something is fucked up, you know? But yeah, that was totally missing from architecture school. Like the plus and the minus side of that. One, that you can't live in your own head. You have a whole team, you have a whole client that you need input from, or this thing's going to fail. But then also, like, there's a positive thing from that. Like when you make this team of people who came together for this project happy and they work it, that's a great part of design. You know, it's not just the final form that everybody in architecture agrees is cool. It's like, you know, making the project successful, and, you know, how people interact with it is just a huge part of it. You know, you can't capture that in a photo, really, you know.
To that end, I mean, most of our projects, I would assume everyone goes through this, and maybe it's just us. They can be really difficult, right? And we tend to design stuff with super tight tolerances, and we're trying to hit very specific looks, very specific lighting conditions, and it can be a grind through design and through construction, in particular through construction, when, you know, problems arise and you have to, at least on our end, stick to our guns about how it has to be, regardless that, you know, there's rebar, you know, 6 inches below the concrete that you wanted to cut, as in ever, because the light has to be embedded in the ground, because we did sample mock-ups of exactly that lighting condition in our office, and we know exactly how that's going to look. And if we top light it, it will not look like that. So go fuck yourself, find a way, we have to do it. And that, you know, it's a grind and it's really hard. And as you go through, you know, if you don't, you have clients, some clients, right, that they'll just stick with you, right? Like they believe in your vision, you know, all of our vision, but they believe that you can deliver what they want, and we need to trust them. And as we move through it, that trust gets whittled away, every change order, every fight, everything. But at the end, if you can deliver that thing that they walk in and they're just so enthusiastic about what it is that they got, and they see it and it's like what they needed, then that's literally the best feeling. It is. Yeah. It's the most intrinsically rewarding thing in the professional world that I've ever felt, right? Now, obviously my family is going to be more intrinsically rewarding to me. But up until the point that I had my children, that was the most intrinsically rewarding thing to me. And that, you know, when we finished Grace, and I was so scared when we said yes. We knew we had a maniac owner. Like, we knew it was going to be bad. Not talking about the chef or GM. They were fantastic. But the guy who was paying the bills, we knew it was going to be rough, and it was rough, and it was delayed, and it was brutal. Going through and fighting to keep things the way we designed it, with everyone seemingly on the other side of the table telling us that doesn't matter. And, you know, I'm talking big things and tiny little things of how the glass has to be a certain way into the kitchen, and how it has to come down in front of a wall, and how it has to be back painted up to 48, 42 inches. And if you don't do that, it won't work. And having it at the end of the day, like, it was the best project at that point that we had ever worked on. And to be honest, I think I'm still chasing that feeling, or I was for a long time, because I knew it was good. And I knew we had like done something pretty special, and that it was awesome. I mean, it was great. And that feeling, it'll sustain you for a long time, you know?
Well, on that, I mean, this is like a great segue, because I really want to jump into that thing, right? There's several of those that you guys have delivered. So a little bit of backstory here, and you guys, I'll lay it out and then correct me where I'm wrong. I'm wrong. But Curtis Duffy was a chef at Grace and then left. For whatever reason, there was a falling out with the restaurant group that you guys had worked with previously, and said, I'm going to build a new restaurant. Hired you guys to design Ever, which, if you've watched The Bear, is probably the most prominently featured space other than Mr. Beef in that show, because it's so ridiculously extraordinary. And then also the the bar area, which I think is upstairs. I have never been there.
It's next door.
Yeah. Okay. So the bar's next door, the lounge.
Yep.
So you guys did after as well. So just absolutely exceptional, like over the top. And it's Michelin. I don't know how many stars. It's a Michelin. It's a 2-star rated Michelin restaurant, and obviously the space is a huge part of that.
We hope it is. You know, we try.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be. You can't. Yeah, for sure. So I'd love, Micah, walk us through, because a lot of people are just listening. Walk us through kind of the design focus, or how you think about how you move through that space.
So, I mean, obviously this is our second restaurant with these guys, right? You know, there's some certain amount of trust there, and they've been through a lot, and we've been through a lot. You know, we kicked off our firm with them being Grace being one of the very first projects, right? So we'd seen a lot with them. Yep. They had obviously gone through the split with their former investor that was a little ugly, so they'd been through a lot, you know. So we're thinking about that. We're thinking about all the things around to fine dining. We're thinking about like the journey that you're on and kind of the road that you take, right? These guys are both like big motorcycle riders too, and they do like big trips to clear their head occasionally, you know, when they actually had time, which was almost never. But we, you know, some of the entry sequence to this restaurant was specifically us thinking about like a journey, you know, being along a road and what you see and what you pass by and what it does to you, the process it takes you into. You know, a big moment of a fine dining experience like that is, you know, you're going to have this tasting menu where basically every single plate comes out and it's this work of art, and you need time to like let that settle in. You know, you got to get yourself into that mood to really experience and appreciate art, right? So you can't just like pop in the door and plop down at a table and be right there. You know, you want to get rid of people's anxiety and their nervousness from outside. You want them to like shed all that stuff. So you really want that entry sequence to be part of that process, right? So it's designed around that. You know, you walk in, you already don't really feel like you're going into a restaurant or something. You feel like you're going into some like underwater exhibit or something, you know, where you don't see right directly into the kitchen or into the dining room. You know, you just see these various pathways that are very mysterious and intriguing, you know. And along that pathway on the way in, we specifically designed a one little slow down moment that was in a natural corner of the space. We called this the Ma room, which comes from the Japanese concept of ma, is like the kind of pause between scenes. You know, it came from a theater thing, I think, originally, but it was just where you take a breath between two scenes before moving on to the next thing. And it's like the negative space that you need to frame the bigger moment. So anyway, we designed this little corner so you could be led in there from the host, then have an amuse-bouche, or maybe just have a warm towel where you can clean off your hands and leave it there. But it was like this moment where you shed your other things, the hall turns 90 degrees, so now you're facing, and you move into this very quiet dining room from there. And really the dining room, everything about it wants to be elegant, beautiful, Curtis always had this like thoughtful and progressive kind of scheme for his food, which is, very abstract, but it fits that kind of artful moment that he wanted to have. So we wanted very comforting, very, very luxurious feeling materials, but then, as always with his stuff, we want the highlight to be the food. So the table is extremely well lit. It's very easy for anybody with any generic iPhone to take a beautiful picture of the plate, and the architecture, it doesn't exactly set into the background, but it is like, it's just chill enough that it doesn't interfere with whatever, the chef wants to do at the table. It's beautiful when you are looking at it, but you don't like it. It doesn't need to be like in your face,
What are the materials used throughout? Just so I can try and visualize all of this in my head.
So when you come in, it's plaster. All of the walls are a curving plaster that very much, they kind of look like an eroded rock sandstone formation, kind of like a slot canyon. But it's all hand done plaster. It has this very kind of lateral, stratified looking technique, which we think kind of helps you lead you around the corners too. And there's one wall that's like dramatically underlit with this really, raking light that rakes the surface and brings out the texture in it. The rest of them are kind of top lit, but it's all indirect. So it's kind of easy, soft on the eyes, and sort of leads you around the corner. And that front space is a lot of those hard, durable materials. It basically has like a poured concrete floor and a lot of this plaster ceilings, plaster walls. It's slightly echoey. As you move into the dining room, we bring in more and more felt and other very sound absorbing materials, to the point where when you get into the dining room, you're really in this cocoon where outside noise is basically gone. There's not a lot of reverberation and echo. It's hard to hear other people at other tables. You're aware of them, but they're not like in your face, and that was very intentional. One of the clients once mentioned, like, the first time he got into like some really nice Mercedes-Benz sedan. Yeah. He was always amazed at how you get into it and you shut the door and it's like this really beautiful click, and then all the world is shut out. Like, it's because it's so acoustically isolated, right? And that was kind of the sense we wanted when you walk into this room. But then we also wanted to keep the kind of curvature of the early spaces in the entry. And we ended up doing this with a lot of slatted wood, this really beautiful ash wood. And what's really nice about that is you can kind of frame your own moments at a table, but then you still get a view through. So you feel like you're in this social space still. You get a view through to other tables, so you feel like you're part of this larger dining room while being isolated enough to really have an intimate moment with your own party if you want to. And we used that, like, this curving slatted wood forms as movable screens to block certain parts off, to block off part of the kitchen if the kitchen wanted to by the end of the night while they're cleaning up. And then we also used them to create little decanter and mise en place like tables for each table, because some of the dishes require either wine decanting or a little bit of prep off of the table surface adjacent to it where people can see it. So that always comes into it too. And it has a very sculptural, organic look where you almost don't get the function of the thing until you see it used.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting to do, at least for me, after you finish, right? Like, I'm a big proponent of, you have your concepts while you're designing it. And then when you're done, to me, the concepts are irrelevant, and it's just what is the thing. And I love to look at the comparison of Grace and Ever, right? Which they're just really great bookends, right? Meaning they were the best that Micah and I could do at that point in our careers, right? Right at the beginning, and then whether this is the midpoint, we don't know what part of the career it is right now, but at this point, that was the best we could do. And the way with Grace, it's an architecture as theater, meaning we made the kitchen, literally, we put it on display. right? And it's like, no, you come in and it was a mix of a gallery with entertainment, right? Like that's what it was, high end, but at the end of the day, that's what it was. And it's a very youthful kind of take on fine dining, wherever it's, well, Grace is a celebration of the artist, right? And I would say Ever is a celebration of the food. And the way that it's designed, it's everything is getting you ready to get to the space where you look at this plate that is perfectly top lit with no shadows, that it puts that front and center as, you know, this is why you're here. Enjoy it. I hope, you know, it's perfect the way that it is. So, yeah.
And then and then the lounge. So after, I imagine that has a very different.
Very different.
Yeah. It has to be really, like, I don't know if it's contrasting, or how did you guys think through the planning of that? And obviously Curtis is highly involved in this, I imagine.
Way more playful. So the thing that Mike and I were looking at, like, do you know the scene in Goodfellas when he comes in, they walk him through the back, right?
Yep. Bring the table.
So in Ever, there is a secret door through a closet that takes you into the observatory. That, to me anyway, that's where it all kind of started. Now Mike is going to talk about how like the mechanics of it work and how you circulate around. No, but for me, that's like, that was the thing. It was like, how do you connect it to this space that's its own thing in this kind of fun, playful way? And it was not intended, or at least, you know, much less serious, right? Like it's meant to be just a fun kind of place to grab a drink.
Yeah. So the observatory is kind of like the private room that's in the back of After, which is the bar. So there's Ever, you know, the main dining, and then After, which is meant to be the complimentary bar, and the observatory is kind of between the two. And it's a private room, basically. It was kind of intended like a VIP space, or like Christopher saying, like the special moment where you can pull somebody in, you know. And that's why it's only accessible through the coat rooms of either After or Ever. Yeah, and it was an interesting thing, you know, and the concept from it sort of came out of like a you know, the guys were like, we like the speakeasy thing, but it's been done a million times. How can we kind of conceptualize this room in a new and different way that kind of has its own thing? And somehow, I think, you know, the GM over there, he was sort of into sci-fi movies like we were too. We talk about that sometimes. And the concept for this little room somehow became this observatory, you know, with a telescope and a screen that opens up to the night sky, and you can sit in there in a small group and check it out, you know. And it has like a 19th century, like, you know, old-fashioned scientist kind of vibe in there. There's a fireplace, and it's like almost kind of traditional. It's pretty.
It's as contrasted as contrasted can be, which I always like.
Yeah, it really is. But I guess where I'm going with that is that almost sort of informed the layout of After as a bar. So the main bar, we knew we wanted to keep that kind of abstract and modern like Ever. But it has like a little bit of an astronomical bent in its layout. You know, the space of the observatory was going to be a circle kind of, or a circular and plan behind the bar. And that gave the main bar this sort of like, almost like it was the center of a small galaxy, and everything else kind of was in orbit around it, you know? So it was like this series of concentric circles, you know? And that one, it's very much is like the bar is meant to be the theater, and the different group levels of seating, you know, are in orbit outside of that. But all the tables are a little bit more private, you know, where you can be in your own little cocoon. And then the bar is actually the tallest and brightest, most interesting space there. And it's it's much more playful. It's still like a really leveled up in terms of finishes and luxuriousness, you know, but it was also supposed to be a lot more approachable and just a nice cocktail bar. It's very, very dark. The whole theme of the bar is like you're having a cocktail right at dusk, right at twilight. So we were going for that as like a level of lighting and also a color. It's sort of dark blue. And then the back bar is like, we played on the old kind of classic Chicago bar where you get mirror and some kind of like, old walnut built-in cabinet.
Yeah,
so
it's like
we did like an abstract take on that, or the back bar is these like slivers of mirror that go around this curved surface, and they sort of there's a gradient between this like dark blue twilight color and walnut millwork that's kind of interesting and changes as you move around it.
I love it, man. I think, especially when you talk about the two spaces, it passes the Jimmy V, the Jim Valvano test. You guys know the Jimmy V test?
I know who that is, but what's the test?
His ESPY speech, he said, if you think, laugh, and cry, that's a full day.
Yeah.
Like if you can provide a design for spaces that allow people to think, right, where you just have these moments of thought, and then in whatever's form the architecture, cry, have some sort of emotional moment, whether it's light, not that it's necessarily making you cry, but something more heavenly that exists, and then make them laugh, and then have like a little bit of playfulness, like when they go through the coat room and they think about Goodfellas. Yeah. I'm sure. And after reading Unreasonable Hospitality, after Eric Schlickman recommended it, and kind of going through the fine dining experience and how bringing that happiness into it, the enjoyable, where it doesn't have to be, people like to laugh. People like to smile. That should be part of the experiences. I love it.
Yeah, and it should be enjoyable and unexpected if you can, like something special. That it feels like, oh, this is really fun. Like I want to be here.
I feel like you're in another little world,
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say both of them. We tried to do that. Like,
I'm going to share my wine room project that we're doing down here in Raleigh with you guys. I may have stolen a lot of ideas from the journey, because we have a secret lounge room.
Yeah.
We have a dark grotto that you feel like you're in a basement, but you get there from upstairs, and then we have a balcony area.
Nice.
So it's a 3-room wine experience.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough
That's
about
good.
me.
We stole most of our stuff too, so it's all right.
There are no new ideas.
No.
We just want to build on them and make them better.
Yeah.
Guys, we're at time, and Chris, I know you got to get to a meeting here soon, and I apologize to the listeners. I know they were all hoping that Chris and I were going to get into our college stories of traveling Europe together.
Please don't.
Amsterdam.
Yeah, no, we don't ever need to. I don't even know what you're talking about. None of that.
That never happened.
No.
Never happened.
No.
But this is really cool. I'd love to, continue the conversation. Let's do it again. Kind of talk about what you guys are working on next. I'm sure what.
We have a really cool bar that we're working on. It's early, so when that gets done, I think you would dig it. Like, we could go through it. It's
this one's going to be wild too.
It's wild. Yeah. I mean, it's taking a lot of thoughts and ideas that we've had. And I dare say it could be another bookend where it's like, here's the best we could do then. Here's the best we could do, 4 years ago. And this one, if we pull it off, Mike, if it actually gets, when you do the design and you're looking at it and you're like, I have no idea how we're going to do this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to end one of two ways. So if it ends good, we'll bring it up. And I think you'd be interested. It's worth talking about.
Cool. Well, and Adam Reed Tucker last week, not to just keep pulling from previous episodes, but I learned so much by doing this. He said, when asked what his favorite project is, he says, the one that I haven't done yet, the next one. So
that's how we are. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, one of the things that is interesting about restaurant work is they are temporary, right? You have to just know that. Like Grace is gone, right? Like, and it was butchered and renovated, and
it's a Shake Shack now. I don't know.
And at some point, I hope it lasts forever, but most restaurants, they have a 5 to 10 year if you're lucky, run. And so I think Micah and I both, when we finish it, we'll celebrate a little bit, but then, we're on to the next one. Like we don't,
what do we take to the next one?
Yeah, we don't fetishize the stuff that we do. Like we don't, we're just like, all we see is the mistakes anyway. And 100%, it's the next one. Like the next one can be better. And so hopefully this next one will be. At least we're trying. So.
Heck yeah, I'm sure it will be. I know you guys are incredible. I have like one more quick question just because I have you guys on here and I'm just curious. And you guys are both in Chicagoland. What do you have like a go-to inspirational space or like a favorite building, room, other than work that you guys have designed in Chicago that just kind of takes your breath away every time you go there? Or that you just
I could tell you in terms of work that's going on right now, like Jeannie Gang, anything she does from a building, I get excited. Like a new movie coming out, like I want to see what they do. I'll say that. And then old school. Sorry, my dog's coming in here. Rem Cool House stuff. I always go back and look at that, especially the Seattle Public Library. And I like reading about, in particular, the mixing chamber. Actually, this bar that we just did, Micah and I were talking about it with that, and just as a concept of how people meet and how people learn and how, if you can set up a place, whether online or in person, where people with varying degrees of information can get together, it's kind of a very cool thing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Micah, where are we sending our listeners? Where do they got to go in Chicago?
Yeah, that's a good question. I am so, like, for me, Chicago is so much about the lake. I love being at the lake. I've spent so much time there, taking my dog out to the lake. That's the place that, I don't know, it always like brings me back and helps me figure out why I live here. And, it's just a nice and beautiful place to be, whether you're downtown or up in my neighborhood in Edgewater. There's a not everybody can get into this space, but there's a temple right now on Sheridan up by us about 6,000 north, that Immanuel temple, I think it is. And they have like a little chapel that's kind of in the corner of the building, cylindrical in plan. And it just has this great floor to ceiling opening that only faces the lake from the southeastern corner. And it's like one of the most beautifully framed views of Lake Michigan I've ever seen. You get a little of the strip, this is right where kind of Hollywood is, where Lakeshore ends, right? Yeah. So you get a strip of buildings that come right up to the water, the sand, and then that beautiful, like, unending sea that is Lake Michigan, and it's one of the most poetic moments. Now, I've only been there a couple times, but I'm at that specific beach a lot too. So I've seen it, but yeah. And I get that moment when I go downtown too, sometimes when you're like going around the shed, Shed Aquarium, that like little spit of land, like it's nice around there. Oak Street Beach, any of those places. Yeah.
Oak Street's always really cool because the John Hancock building is right there, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild. And then you're on this weird beach, with there's volleyball there, but they used to have that beach or that little restaurant there.
Yeah. Still do, yeah. I mean, getting on a bike and biking down the lake in Chicago, man, there's nothing better. It's the coolest place in the world. That used to be my commute. That's the thing I miss most about my old office is, like not having that beautiful commute. I felt so spoiled. Who in the world has this, this kind of backdrop?
Because we lived in the Loop, or I guess we lived in Lakeview, and I worked in Evanston and Glencoe. But my commute was on Lakeshore Drive. It was awesome. Like, you could take the highway, but if I'm going to sit in traffic, at least I'm on Lakeshore Drive.
Yeah.
It's getting better.
Yeah.
Cool, guys. Sorry, we're going down Chicago nostalgia, but I think it's cool for people to kind of hear from you guys. But thanks for hopping on, man. This was really great.
Yeah, this was great.
Please do it again if you guys are up for it, and keep kicking butt.
We'll
Right
try,
on.
man.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, man. I'll talk to you.
Talk to you
Later.
soon.